I make a distinction between pain and suffering. Pain is inevitable. We're sentient beings. You're going to stub your toe. You're going to get toothache and get stomachache. But suffering, I want you to consider, is optional once we have newfound awareness. Most people I want you to consider are always trying to get away from something. So even the things that we want, and of course we've got beautiful examples of what we want, I want you to consider wanting is a future-based proposition, right? If we want for something, what we're actually saying is we don't have it. And usually the wanting is something outside of us. It's exogenous. Like, what are some of the things that anyone wants? So you're happy to share. Again, you can be as vulnerable as you want.
A better relationship with my daughters.
How long have you not had a great relationship with your daughters?
3 years.
3 years. Okay, so significant. And they're teens, 20s? How old are they?
19, 20.
Okay, great. And so currently having the absence of a better relationship with your daughters, how does that leave you feeling?
Sad.
Yes, I got it. Okay. I'm sorry to hear that.
Their dad died like 2 years ago.
Okay, I'm sorry to hear that.
And I feel guilty about it.
So why is it that you're associating the passing of your partner with guilt?
He died of alcoholism.
Okay, got it.
The last 5 years were really, really tough, but we were together.
Got it.
And then finally got so bad, I'm like, you gotta leave.
Yeah.
And when he left, I knew in my soul that he wasn't gonna make it.
Okay.
He didn't make it.
Okay, got it.
And so there's guilt that I had him
And so now how are you associating that with your daughters?
because they're hurt.
Right, for the passing of their dad. And do you feel they're also blaming you? Got it. And just, we get it. It's very clear, but give us as best as you're willing to share. What is the impact for you of looking through that story that if you hadn't asked him to leave, that he wouldn't have passed, and the impact that that had and the ramifications on your daughters? Like, what does that leave you feeling?
That I wasn't strong enough.
Okay. Got
So
it.
like had I muscled through it, like maybe he would have gotten better.
Yeah.
And then he would gotten cured, and then he'd be at home, and we'd all be together, and they'd be happy, and
Yeah.
they wouldn't be mad at me.
Got it. It's really meaningful for me that everyone's here, but it touches me that you're willing to share this story. The fact that we've never met, right? So, first of all, it shows your courage and your commitment as a mother, and I just want to acknowledge that, and the beautiful dedication you have to even I can't imagine what you went through during the course of that relationship and how hard that was. I have so much reverence for women, but particularly mothers, that we men could never possibly understand what a woman like you goes through. So I just want you to know and hear that, and that I see you for everything that you've gone through that I couldn't possibly imagine or understand. This is something that is so beautiful because it's human, right? And especially for a woman, and especially for a mother, where we really take it on as though it's our fault, right? Guilt and shame are very, very popular ways to relate to ourselves. And I want you to consider, outside of this beautiful story that we're all I feel very fortunate to be a part of, I want you to consider that every human being is looking through the lens of some form of judgment, and usually multiple forms. And invariably, it's all self-directed, right? It's something I did wrong. And we see this in kids, even in the most horrific and heinous of traumas that kids experience. They're confused, right? And we can go to the extremes of sexual abuse and physical abuse, where the child abandons itself under the impression that he, she did something wrong. So in this particular story, which really is, it's so beautiful because her dedication is really to what I said I want to talk to, right? Which is love. And I want you to consider, it may seem like a broad statement, that every form of emotion is just a different iteration of love. Like when people grieve, it's an expression of love. When people are disappointed, it's really an expression of love. You didn't get what you wanted. You know, when people are sad, in this case, it's a feeling the absence of love, right? So again, what I want you to understand is this is such a beautiful commitment to your capacity to love. But the only thing that I see missing is the fact that you're not including yourself in that, right? Which is, of course, a woman and a mother's prerogative usually, right? It's about everybody else first. So every human being is doing the best they can within the limits of their awareness and their conditioning, and our conditioning gets really well formed in the formative years, right? Regardless of what we go through, and some people go through horrific things. But I would assert that every human being, just by virtue of being in this dimension, is going to go through whatever they need to trigger the constraints with which we arrived in those formative years, certainly between 2 and 17, right? Like we've really pretty much turned on any kind of primal prison that we have in our subconscious. I'm not wanted, I'm not good enough, I'm not loved, I'm not valued, I'm not special, usually in the realm of not, right? So just having been with your husband for 19 years, what were some of the things that he might say or talk about himself?
He had a lot of knots. And I was constantly trying to make it better.
Yeah, of course. Beautiful. So you can hear that, like, so she could recognize, and who here can relate, first of all, to some sense of not enough, whether it's not you, but yeah, somebody else. Okay, it's a pretty popular way of living or not living, depending on how you look at it. Yeah, okay, great. So you're aware of this, right? And so what I want you to understand is that we engage with human beings in the most beautiful way, and I've been reading a lot about the power of relationships, really, and like the actual meaning of relationships. And I would assert, based on one of my quotes that everyone seems to love, is that life will present us with people and circumstances to reveal where we're not free. And so the relationship that you had with your partner and now through your daughters is really exposing where you're not free. Does that make sense? And yeah, as long as we sort of we superimpose the way that we feel because of, like, your guilt is because of, like, you asked him to leave 3 years ago, or the fact that you have a bit of a disharmonious relationship with your daughters right now is because of, right, they're hurt, and it's because of, right, there's this cascade, right? Your real primal issue that you brought up is to have a better relationship with your daughters, but you don't have a good relationship with your daughters because they're hurt. And why they hurt? Well, because the dad died. And why did the dad die? Because it's your fault that you asked him to leave, right? So you start to see all this cookie trail. But really what it comes back down to is that you did something wrong.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Yeah, if guilt and shame can only live within the container that we think we did something wrong. Can you remember a time, going back to your childhood, where you maybe felt that? Anything come to mind? A few things? Anything? Anything that really stands out?
I mean, almost too many.
Yeah, I got it. I can see it in your system. Yeah, so what one do you think was probably the most painful for young you?
Talking too much.
Talking too much. Okay, and was that, who said that? Mum, dad, teachers, both?
Mom, teachers.
Mum and teachers. Okay, you were too much. Yeah, can you remember where was one time that you were talking too much? Like, go to the place.
Library.
In the library, okay. That would be a terrible place to talk too much. Beautiful example.
The librarian.
Oh my gosh.
Nicknamed me Monica Motormouth, and it stuck with me like from second grade, like till I left.
Monica Motormouth. That's a great potential for a cartoon character or something. Okay, Monica Motormouth.
That was not fun.
Oh, no. I get the whole world that you're in, and I can't wait to burst your bubble. So how old were you when you were in this library? 7. Okay. And so why was it? You're reading books to friends, you're talking with friends, you're playing in the corner with friends?
Yeah, just talking, just not being interested in books.
Okay, so the librarian, Monica Motormouth, and then where would it happen at home with Mum?
Oh, then she called my mom, and then my mom was just like infuriated that I was disruptive and like.
Yes.
You know.
So not only are you doing something wrong now, you're also bad, right? Let's throw that in the mix. Because just anything to amplify, this sort of self-negation and feeling of inadequacy. So you're 7. So the first time you get told that, like, what was that like when you're like just a kid, 7, motor mouthing your way away in the library?
Yeah.
And your librarian friend tells you that you're like too noisy and called you. Like, what did that feel like for that little 7-year-old?
It hurt my feelings and it embarrassed me because she said it like out loud.
In front of everybody, yeah. Guilt and shame.
And then she told the teacher, and then the teacher said it in the classroom.
Oh, wow.
So it just was like.
Yeah, and then you go home and Mum hears about it, and so she reinforces it. And so from that moment forth, what decision did you make about yourself?
That I was disruptive.
You're disruptive. Yeah, and so what did you decide you had to do in order to compensate for that?
Clean.
Clean. Clean.
Yeah.
Okay, can you expand? Like anything like the library floor?
like that. My mom, that would make people happy. Like it would be tidy, be useful, be of service. Like, okay, so I became like
Okay.
zealous with my
Yeah,
tidiness.
amazing.
Like I make run around and pop everything and make it like night, like
Yeah.
be of service. Tidy.
Okay, amazing. Yeah, and we could put that under the auspices of maybe just saying like be a good girl, right, and get everything right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So are you tracking, guys? Did anyone relate to this story? Are there any other wrong, bad children in here? So I digress. Okay, so Monica Motormouth, which I think that's just such an epic moniker. But anyway, it's all the M's. Okay, so we could really get the world of that, right? So that little 7-year-old who's been shamed, embarrassed in front of everyone, then the class, then at home, and then your coping strategy is like, well, I'm just going to become the good girl. In this case, I'm going to clean. Where does that show up in your life today?
When I get nervous, I clean.
Yeah, okay.
Like when he died, I did his laundry and I folded it and I put it back where it belonged. I unpacked his suitcase,
Yeah.
took it home, did his laundry, put it back.
Yeah.
And the house became very, very organized. Like, just
Yeah.
if it's organized, you'll be happy because you know where everything is.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah. I really get the world that you live in. And I just want to sit with it because you're quite extraordinary. And I hope, that by the time we're done with this conversation, not just you, but you're a gift for everyone. You're in the hot seat right now, but I promise you, everyone has got their version of this, right? Everyone is cleaning, manically cleaning. I'm a Virgo, so I can fucking relate, I promise you. Oh, okay, great. Yeah. Okay, so when you live inside of the world that who you are is doing something wrong and that you're bad, one of the coping strategies you use is to clean and be a good girl. Do you feel the impact on your emotional and physical body by living that way?
I ended up with like pretty bad scoliosis,
Okay.
which I've been doing work on around,
Yeah.
so I'm not in pain,
Okay.
but my back's pretty jacked up.
Can you hear that? So scoliosis back, which to me makes perfect sense, right? So I actually, ironically, was just working someone in a mastermind who had scoliosis for 40 years until I showed her in 21 minutes she didn't, right? That's not to deny the subtle deformities, if you want to call it that, or just randomness of the positioning of her spine. But to me, like whenever we have something that's really back related, it's sort of the excess weight that we're carrying. Does that make sense? Right. So what I hear for you is living in the world where you did something wrong and that you're fundamentally bad, and the coping strategy is just this almost unanswerable quest to control your environment is just such a heavy weight. Can you feel that? Now you're a mom, you've given birth to 2 kids, you've managed them, you reared them, so women particularly, like I make this subtle distinction, which is one of my favorite for women, which I hope will touch all of you, is that one of the greatest gifts of any woman is resilience. I've met some incredibly resilient women, but it's almost like a birthright, right? Like the design of a woman, the intuition of a woman, the capacity to rear, to raise, to give birth. But when a woman lives inside of a world that is of some compromise to her own value, resilience becomes tolerance. Oh, yeah, that kind of hit, right? Do you feel that? And this is where so often when I'm helping women who are in situations that really aren't very healthy and borderline abusive, their capacity to really withstand, in this case, often abuse, it might not always be physical, but often sadly it is. The capacity for a woman to be able to withstand, when combined with the absence of self-worth, goes from resilience, power, extraordinary woman, to somebody who's abandoned themselves and is able to tolerate. So does that resonate? So I would assert that your anatomy is representative of the fact that you're carrying something that's not yours to carry. I actually gave this example yesterday, and I guess it really hit home, so I'll use it again when I was speaking at this event downtown. What Monica is doing, sorry, Monica Motormouth, I don't mean to, is I said, imagine you're in Phoenix, and actually we got someone here from Phoenix, so he can attest to this. I used to work with the Diamondbacks, so I had to go there through the summer, which was not my favorite thing to do, but it's like 120 something degrees, right? And so it's akin to what Monica is doing, and I hope you can all really resonate with this example. It's like you're driving through Phoenix, it's 120 degrees out, but you crank the air conditioning in the car, but you're under the impression that in order for me to be comfortable, what I have to do is roll down the windows in the car and cool down Phoenix for me to be okay. Does that make sense? That's how stupid we are. Right? So again, especially mothers fall prey to that, right? Because they're sort of the end of the line, right? It's everyone else's needs that are coming first. So we get the world of it. Does everyone start to sort of see particularly what Monica's dealing with, and you can relate to that, everybody, right? You've got your own version of Phoenix that you're trying to cool down. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of an inquiry, right, to the world that you live in. So your daughters are 19 and 20. Can you remember either of them roughly around the age of 7? Great. So as their mother, were there times that you recognized that they were making a lot of noise? And did you recognize that, okay, well, yes, that might be frustrating. Maybe you're tired. You're trying to prepare food. They've asked you questions a million times, but you recognize, but it's a 7-year-old, right? She's a child.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there was sort of a discernment there that it's like, okay, right? Yeah. Okay, so now let's go to Monica in the library, who's an excitable little 7-year-old, who's making noise and talking and doing whatever she is with her friends, right? Did that version of Monica, could she have done anything different at that moment in time? Yes or no?
No.
No, you couldn't have done anything different, right?
No.
Why?
Because I didn't have the courage. I wasn't permitted to talk like that or to stand up to myself.
And I'm going to make it even easier for you, because you didn't.
Yeah, I love when you say that.
Okay, good. Good. I like to please too. Okay, great. So the thing to recognize is back then when you were 7 and you were excited and you're in a library and you're doing what you're doing, because of the nature of linear time, another one of my quotes, as many of you may have heard, is what happened and couldn't have happened any other way because it didn't. However, what we do, and again, I hope you're all tracking because I'm talking to her, but I'm talking to you, right? So whatever your version is, whatever you did wrong, and I know all of you have done a lot of bad things because you all live in LA, so first of all, you've all done a lot of wrong and bad things, right? So I want you to understand that at that moment when you were 7, you couldn't have done anything different. Why? Because that's what occurred to a 7-year-old, whatever was going through your body from the state of your conditioning, the programming, your genetics, your excitement, the temperature, the friends you were with, that just couldn't have been different. But because there was a moment where you felt judged and you were told, you were informed that you did something wrong, and you don't have the discernment as a 7-year-old to go, oh, librarian person, you're so cute. I'm 7. I'm just excited. Right? You just feel the shame and guilt because this is part of the programming that we're here to reveal so that then we can fundamentally transcend so that we can come back to real love and acceptance of ourselves, which is what I'm hoping you will leave here with. So that 7-year-old, you can see you couldn't have done anything different, right? So now you have different timelines. So from that moment that you decided you did something wrong and you were embarrassed and now you're bad, and so your coping strategy was in your case to clean. So now you have, for however many years, 4+ decades, been living in a world where you do stuff wrong and you're bad. Right? And we get the weight of that, even to the fact that it's affecting your anatomy, let alone I can't imagine how exhausting it is and how far you go above and beyond. And especially, to me, there's no surprise with the kind of partners we bring in, right? It would be perfect for you to bring in somebody that you have to quote unquote serve or to clean up. Right? Because that's the way that you've conditioned yourself. And I promise you that he had at the deepest level some version of he's wrong and bad too. You clean, he drinks. Do you see this? Right? Like I shared once, like I said to somebody, the guy who's right now working in Santa Monica and has got a beautiful corner office and he drives a Mercedes, but he's got a place in the Palisades, and if that guy's here, don't take it personally, it's just a completely made up example. Energetically, who's worked so hard to get to the 6 figures, the 7 figures, or whatever it is, isn't so different from the person who is just down the streets further on Abercrombie or in Venice, who is currently hitting on some sort of drug. They both are being defined by a very similar narrative, which is perhaps I'm not wanted, I'm not good enough. And so when we have these fundamental limitations, we tend to go in either way. We tend to prove it or disprove it. but we're being defined by the same narrative. And when I shared this with someone, they were fascinated. They're like, holy shit. Like, so it looks like the guy who's living the big life, but really has no relationship with his spouse. He may even be like cheating. He has God knows how many sort of medications in his cabinet because of the dis-ease that's in his system. But it looks good relative to the guy on the street who's got his version of prescribed drugs, which is just buying them versus through someone in a lab coat. But I want you to understand the energy and the frequency of how we function as human beings, that in our subconscious, if we got some form of negation of ourselves, right? Meaning that I'm not something. If who we are, without getting too esoteric and spiritual, is boundless, timeless, beautiful beings, but the narrative is that I'm not something, now we're at war with ourselves. And your version of war, which you just, I'm so grateful for the courage that you have to share this. It speaks volumes about who you are as a human and as a mother, and I just want to repeat that. Shows us that you, like everybody else in here, is at war with yourself. Can you see that? And my commitment to all of you is to find peace. One of my quotes is that we can't have world peace if people are at war with themselves. Do you get that? However many people are out there protesting, which is another form of resistance, right? Even the resistance, it's even called the resistance, right? The fight against cancer. Well, how the fuck do you think you got cancer in the first place? You're constantly fucking fighting, right? So for you, my dear, living in this world of you're not, in this case, doing it right, or even worse, you're doing it wrong and you're bad, leaves you in the state of perpetual exhaustion and the compensation. And I would assert that, as I said, your partner, through nothing but the miracle of mirroring, had his own version. You just coped in different ways. Does that make sense? Amazing. So where were you born?
El Paso.
El Paso. Okay, great. So I'm going to take you through a little exercise. You up for it? Okay, great. So Monica Motormouth. This is quite a mouthful in of itself. So if I were to cut you open, am I going to find a physical manufacturing label, like material of your choice, wood, plastic, metal, inside of you that says, Monica, born in El Paso, she is bad and does everything wrong? Yes or no?
No.
Say it louder for the people in the back.
No.
No, I'm not going to find that, right?
No.
I'm going to find blood and whatever. I'll find your genes, and if someone really knew how to read your genome, then they could explain why you have dark brown eyes and dark hair, right? Like that's part of the hardware. So then, because we've realized as a group that you really live inside of a world where you're doing things wrong, you're bad, it impacts the way that you're currently relating to your daughters, which is part of the guilt and shame, and this is all going to hopefully just disappear by the time we're done. How does that exist? If it's not part of your hardware, where does I do things wrong and I'm bad? Where does it live?
In my heart, in my soul, in my head, in my
Yeah, let's go with the third one. The heart, I think your heart's pretty fucking epic, to be honest. Your soul, impenetrable. But your head, different story for all of us, right? So let's say it exists in your head. And what is the form of, I did something wrong and I'm bad? What is its structure?
Like the words?
Yeah, words.
Just
Yeah, you're
the repeating of
you're
the
with
words.
me. Yeah, the words. Yeah. Now, I want you to consider, all of you, that she started with guilt and shame and was really talking about wanting to better her relationship with her daughters, right? So she's not thinking, I'm bad and I'm doing something wrong, maybe periodically, but it's more, I just want to have a better relationship with my daughters, right? That's the conscious thought that is sitting inside of this subconscious constraint called who she is bad. Who she is does something wrong, right? So it's in words, in your head. So I want you to consider, based on the question I had before, like there's no manufacturing label inside of you, right, that says that you're bad and that you're doing something wrong. It exists in your head, in words. So if it's just words in your head, is it an absolute truth, and you can only answer yes or no, that who you are is bad and that you do things wrong?
No.
No, not at all. I would say if I took a poll in here, people would say quite the opposite about you. Anyone agree with that? Yeah, right? So, if it's not part of your hardware and it exists only as software in narrative, literally language, words, that you decided as a 7-year-old, through no fault of your own, because as kids we don't have the discernment, but from that moment forth, you created a world that you've been living in called you're bad and you do things wrong, based solely in words. You get that? So if it's not true that what you do is wrong and that makes you bad, if that's gone, it's literally impossible for Monica to relate to herself as a human being who does anything bad or wrong. This is going to take a little bit of a leap of faith because I'm introducing you to a world with which you're not familiar right now. So I'm going to repeat it. It's impossible for you to feel like you've done anything wrong or bad. Impossible. How might you feel? I mean, that's a pretty good smile, but...
Yeah, I'm free, like...
Say that louder.
Free, like, relieved.
Yeah, free's pretty good, isn't it? Yeah. I want you to consider that's you. You are free. Wasn't that 7-year-old free, having fun, laughing, until she was told that she was apparently doing something wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah. Never went anywhere, just got covered up. You made a lie through no fault of your own that you've been living in for decades, just like everybody here. See, when we recognize that we live in lies, these primal prisons, and then all we do is we compensate. We have to, right? As long as we become separate from source, from our true, like you said, unity, right? Someone said unity. Darsha wants unity. She doesn't want a husband at all. It's kind of a pain in the ass. Not that I've had one, but she just wants unity, right? Which is really true connection with the essence of who we are.
Mm-hmm.
But we've never lost that because we are that. What happens is we just accumulate something on the surface, in this case, a story based on an experience that was scary and you were embarrassed, and all of these feelings are totally appropriate, especially for a kid. But from that moment forth, you created an idea of you that not only was something you thought, but you became. And then the you that you are for yourself, which is a weird statement, but the you that you are for yourself then drives all of your thoughts, feelings, and actions, in this case, coping strategies.
Hmm.
You don't wake up and say, oh, I can't wait to clean. Cleaning has to happen, right? Right?
Come on.
Nobody in here wakes up and says, I can't wait to, wake up and make, the completely impractical choices that I've been doing for decades over and over again. But that's what people do because of these behaviors, right? I talk about the language we use and the language that uses us. Everyone here, as far as I know, uses English, right? That's so we can communicate. But the language that uses us is the words that got created as part of our identity that formed in our childhood. So the language that uses you is that you're wrong and that you're bad. And it's defined you. But it's not you. It's not a truth. You were a cute little girl, 7 in a library, who was laughing. You just decided at that moment that you must not do that. And immediately the essence of freedom and relief that you just tapped into got thwarted. It got inhibited. It got compromised. Do you see that? So now from the place of freedom, from the place of relief, can you feel that in your body? Can you feel lighter?
Yeah.
Are your daughters here?
No.
No, they're not, right? But they are. You brought them with you. You
Right.
brought them in the world of you're doing something wrong and bad and you're a guilty mother. Do you see that?
Yeah.
This woman, who is free with relief, has a different relationship with her daughters. Do you see that?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you doing anything wrong with your daughters? Was it your fault that the father passed? Is it your fault, yes or no, that the father passed?
No.
Say it a little louder.
No.
It's not, right? So the whole world that you walked in here with, I totally have compassion for and I completely understand, but it was all illusory. And it just sustained. See, folks, I really want you to understand the world that you create at a young age, it is the confinement that you live in, is the prison that you identify with. You can only keep it if you have evidence to keep it. Yeah, do you just get that?
Yeah.
What did you just get?
That I'm creating my evidence.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah.
Isn't that insane? You wonder why people drink so much. Talk to your doctor, right? Yeah. Your story that you did something wrong and you're bad is a lie. Everybody in here, nobody, who here really is not good enough? I'll take any story. Okay, what do you got? Tell me. Yeah, But is it a truth that you're not good enough, or is that just something you feel?
It's something I feel.
Yes, it's not a truth.
I know.
It's not a truth, right? But everyone can relate to it. And then pretending on, like, I forever was not good enough. My name in university was Perfect Pete. No pressure there. But that was a wonderful way for me to have to create more pressure for myself to reinforce the fact that what was actually going on beneath the surface is I'm trying to compensate for the fact that I think I'm inadequate. You see how exhausting that is? Yeah. So you, my dear, not only your mother, 3, you've gone through God knows what you went through with a husband, and through no judgment of him. He was in his own hell, right, in prison, and whatever you had to tolerate and put up with. But now there's just the reality of life, which, let's face it, as humans, is usually pretty hard enough. But then you've got, on top of that, the suffering of your own judgment, living in a world, your own prison, unbeknownst to yourself, so there's no guilt or shame, that you are wrong and bad, and you constantly have to clean, which is both literal and figurative, right? God knows how many times you try to clean up your husband, right? And the only reason we do that is because you're living in a lie called that you're bad and you did something wrong. See, the ego needs evidence because it's a pretense. In case you're not getting it, I hate to break it to you, but there's nothing wrong with any of you. And I know there's a ton of defense out there that would try to prove me wrong. Right? That's how attached we are to the idea that we're basically fundamentally broken. There's something wrong with us. And if there's not something wrong with us, there's definitely something wrong with our spouse. If there's something wrong with our spouse, there's definitely something wrong with the government. I'm still stuck on that one. Yeah. Right? So again, what becomes available for Monica in the absence of the idea that you're bad and you did something wrong? What becomes available for you now in the way that you could walk out of here and live your life? And again, I'm appealing to your imagination because I'm introducing you to a world that you're not familiar with.
That I could be lovable.
Wow, say that louder.
That I could be lovable.
Who can relate to that? That I could be lovable. Would that be worth the price of entry? Right? You're so lovable, it's ridiculous. You see that? Like, everybody here is lovable, let's face it, right? But I mean, look at the contribution she has been to this group already, right? Who could not love a woman who's got the courage to share something that's not an easy story to talk about? Your lovability is there because that's the essence of who you are. It's what's driven all of your actions. You've been informed by love. A compensation at one level, but really the girl who was love, who was loving life, who then through the threat of the absence of love was taken away, you then became more loving, right? As a compensation. You love your girls, don't you? Yeah, they're lucky to have you. But your love gets compromised when you look through the lens of guilt and shame. What I'm about to say, I really want you all to get. She thinks she loves her daughters, and I'm not denying that, she does. But her capacity to love her daughters is compromised by the fact that she's self-oriented. Does that make sense? Meaning what she's actually up to in real life, her love is unquestionable. She loves her daughters. She adores her daughters. She'd do anything for her daughters. But what's informing her actions towards them is she doesn't want to do anything wrong or bad. So whilst we say that we love someone, actually invariably it's self-oriented, meaning we're up to something we want to get. She wants to get acknowledgement. She wants them to like her, to see her. Does that make sense? And it doesn't make you bad. We all do it. I mean, I've had plenty of versions. Right? But real love doesn't have an agenda. So if for right now, just for right now, could you, just with us, if your daughters are hurt, and even if they, for whatever completely inaccurate reasons, think that somehow mum is to fault, because if she had not kicked dad out, which is a complete illusion and it's not a truth, right? Your partner had all of his conditioning and his karma and his probable future completely written before he even knew you existed. Do you understand that? Right? Humans are very predictable because we have all of this conditioning. And in all the beautiful efforts that you had to try and help, which I can imagine were incessant and beautiful, it didn't change because somebody has to want to do it themselves, right? So even if for right now, your daughters are still in a false story that somehow it's your fault, if you're just coming from love, is that okay that that's what they believe right now? Yeah.
Yeah.
It is, right? Because you know it's not a truth.
Right.
See, it all falls apart, right? Once you step outside of your world of illusion that there's something wrong with you and you're bad, no, you're one of the most loving people in this room. You were just looking through a lens of compromise that was a lie, that was really about you, when in fact it's something that happened to a young 7-year-old who was just being a kid. Your daughters can't help but love you. They adore you. But they're also looking for their way of escaping their own hurt. And when we're in pain, it's so much easier to look to somebody or something else versus just sit with the fact that they're sad that their dad died. You know, my dad died when I was 17, went to work, never came back. I didn't know how the fuck to process that. My mom had already died when I was 7. Like, what does a 17-year-old do? Like, you know, it took me years to just be a complete mess and start crying for hours, realizing how much I just missed him. It still hits me. But that's beautiful because, as I said, it's an expression of love. So your daughter's hurt is an expression of love. But through the lens of Monica's bad, all you can see is that you did something wrong. Do you see how that completely changes? Isn't that beautiful? It completely changes your relationship. So you get to go home because they're still at the house, you said? And you get to be with your daughters. How does that feel?
Really, really beautiful.
It's really beautiful. That's all they want. They just want to be with you. And through no fault of your own, you're too busy trying to get their acknowledgement that you're scared that you did something wrong because you're a 7-year-old in the library, superimposing a lie, which that was too, that this man passed because of you. And all you're all wanting is to just connect and feel. Thank you so much for your courage and for your love and for the gift that you're going to be for your daughters moving forward. They just want to be with you. They love you. And you're very lovable.
Thank you, Peter.
Let's just give it a round of applause.